Welcome back to A Better Choice Homestead. My name is Kelly. Today we are starting out in the garden before heading into the kitchen because I have celery to harvest. A lot of celery to harvest. It is time. It is probably a little tad past time, but we're still going to make the best of this. So I am going to get all of this cut down and brought in, washed up, and we are going to preserve a year's worth of celery. And now I have an empty bed to start planting things for a fall harvest. I've got my work cut out for me today, so let's get started. I'm going to start just by cutting off the ends here, and those will go into the compost pile. And then I'll take out any of the leaves that or stalks that don't look all that great, because I do save my my tops. Got a little snail on here, if you can see that. So that's one of the reasons why these need to be washed really well. So I'm just going to let them sit in the sink as I chop all these down, and then I will soak that big pot of salted water for a little bit. This is probably a couple weeks past its prime. And my celery is not as big as it normally is. The stalks are, they're fairly thin, not all the way across all of them. This is Utah tall celery, and I usually do get a wider result on the stalks, but I am still figuring out my watering system. I have drip installed, but I just don't think, I'm figuring out how many beds to water at once so that they get enough water. I think that these guys, celery really likes water, and I think that these guys didn't get quite what they needed. I am seeing a lot of things crawl around on these leaves. And partly that is because I do not use any sprays or chemicals on my garden. So the bugs like the food. And we want that, right? We want to eat food that other creatures would eat. After soaking the celery in a saltwater bath for about an hour in all, and then really cleaning it and going through it, I ended up tossing more than half. So this did not yield as much celery as I was hoping for. So I'm going to pivot in what I was planning to do for preserving this, and I'm actually going to make some Mirepoix. So with Mirepoix, that is your onion, carrot, celery base that you can use in casseroles, in soups, in stews, in stocks and broths, pot pies, just it's your basic base. It adds beautiful flavor, and I think Mirepoix is named after the French city in which it was invented in way back when. And the recipe is 2 parts of onion to 1 part celery to 1 part carrot. So I'm gonna first chop up my celery and see how much that yields me, and then I will know how much onion and how much carrot to do. You want your dices in Mirepoix to be relatively the same across all of the vegetables, and I'm gonna go for a medium chop. And that way it cooks through at the same time. So once we get all of this chopped, I'm gonna cook it very, very slowly in my cast iron skillet with fat, so with butter. And you don't want to caramelize the vegetables in the Mirepoix. You want to just cook them really, really well, but low and slow to deepen the flavor profile. And this is going to make quite a bit of Mirepoix, and I will be able to freeze that, or I will be able to freeze dry that. Even though I'm going to be making it with butter, you can still freeze dry things that have fat in it. It just won't have as long of a shelf life because fat does go rancid over time. And the ratios, the 2-1-1 ratio, you can certainly use more of one ingredient than the other, but traditionally it's 1 part celery, 1 part carrot, 2 parts onion. I was also going to blanch and freeze some celery so that I can use it in other dishes throughout the year. I am really looking forward to doing some cream of celery soup this fall, but we'll see how much I end up with here. And I am soaking the celery tops in the salt water so that I can get that dried and I can get that into the freezer for use in my bone broths this fall and winter. All right, let's see how much this yielded. All right, that's 4 cups right here. I think that we're gonna stick with 4 cups on the Mirepoix. So that will leave me some celery to go ahead and preserve as blanched so that I can make some celery. It'll be I think a potato celery leek soup with some bacon crumbles on the top, but that'll be for another day. And we will get these blanched while the Mirepoix is cooking down. So I'm gonna get those just put into a bowl for now. Set that aside. And now I need 4 cups of carrots. I picked up a 25-pound bag of organic carrots from Azure Standard this week. They were the number 2 or the seconds, which is really how I like to buy the carrots. They're really affordable that way. I don't mind if they're short and squatty, or if they're not full carrots, because I'm just going to be chopping them down to use like this or in my dog food. So these I actually got washed already and then just stuck them in the fridge waiting for this. So I'm just going to cut the ends off here. Set those aside for the compost pile. Now with carrots, because they roll, they can be dangerous to cut. So you definitely want to slice them in half so that you have a sturdy surface on which to cut them further. So I'm going to start by cutting them in half. Okay, once you have a flat surface to work with, depending on the size of the carrot, because you want to get, about the same size dice that you have on the celery. So I'm just eyeballing it here. I think this one needs 2 slices down. And we need 4 cups. It's just a tad bit over 4 cups. I'm okay with that. I've got a ton of carrots to preserve. So now I am looking for 8 cups of onions. Well, I do get them from Azure Standard. This is the 10-pound bag. Yeah, 10 pounds of organic onions, and they are gorgeous. Look at that. They're large. They're just beautiful. I'm just gonna get to chopping these. I save the skins, just like I do the tops of the celery and the tops of the carrots, for use in my stocks and broths. I'm just cutting the ends off here. Okay, so there's a couple different ways that you can chop onions. This is one way. This is usually my go-to because I can easily just peel off that outer layer of skin. The other way, how a lot of people do it, I just never remember to do it that way. I'll show you that on the last 2 of these, the other 2. All right, so for me, this is really simple. They already have kind of the slices you can see going through them. And so if I just kind of follow those along all the way to the end and then turn it this way, I get a nice dice on those onions. I've got a pretty hard core on that one. And that made this fall apart, so not a good example. All right, so there's our hard core in here. There's something in there. I'm gonna chop that section. Yeah, there's a hard core in the center there. So I'm gonna take that out. There we go. And this is how I learned to chop onions before I really learned how to chop onions. And so it's just my muscle memory way of chopping onions. However, there is another way. All right, so the more popular way of cutting onions is to leave the root end intact. So cutting off the top of the onion and then peeling your onion. But if you leave the root end intact, it's going to hold the pieces for you as you cut. So I'm just going to cut this in half again, leaving the root. And now I'm going to cut the slices in the same direction, but I'm not going to go all the way to the end. So instead of using your hand to hold the sliced pieces of onion together, the root is doing that for you. All right, this is 4 cups. That was 2 onions. So I'm going to chop up these other 2 onions, and we're going to call that 8 cups, and then we'll be done chopping and on to cooking. All right, now I'm just going to get some butter going in the pan, and we are going to start cooking up some mirepoix. Let me go ahead and get this pan turned on. About a medium. I'm going to add a couple tablespoons of butter. This might take a couple batches, but it's only going to cook for about 10 minutes each. Probably gonna throw a few herbs in here as well. I gotta look in my drawer and see what sounds good to me. All right, we've got the butter coated over all of the veg, and so I am now gonna turn the heat down to low, stirring occasionally. We're going for 10 minutes. And I'm gonna go with some homegrown freeze-dried thyme. Just a little pinch of that. And some tarragon. I think tarragon will be amazing in here. It's got kind of a bright citrusy note to it, as well as a slightly sweet licoricey note. But it's so slight, it's so subtle, it's truly delicious with vegetables. Oh, yeah, that tarragon, oh, smells amazing. If you don't grow tarragon, I suggest you give it a try. This is my 2nd year growing it. It does really, really well, and it's easy to preserve, to either dehydrate, freeze dry, or even hang dry. And it adds a phenomenal flavor profile to fish, to meat, to vegetable dishes, cheese sauces. So good. Tarragon is so good. I kid you not, I really recommend that you try fresh tarragon. It is really good at relieving pain and inflammation in your body. It can increase insulin sensitivity, so it's good for diabetes. It helps to alleviate depression. It helps to fight fungal infections. helps to regulate your immune system. It's got antioxidants in it, so it's cancer fighting as well. And it's also really good for this health of your skin. And the thyme that we put in here helps to lower blood pressure, helps to boost your immunity, boost your mood. It's antibacterial, and it also helps to alleviate symptoms of a cough. All right, we're just about done, and that would be 12 minutes total. The timer is going to go off here in a couple seconds. What I really like about preserving the celery and the carrots and the onions this way is you can use this for so much. And I've already mentioned what you can use it for, but I just spent, a couple hours today harvesting, washing, chopping, and now cooking. That's a significant time investment, and I'm not going to have to do that again probably for close to the rest of the year because I've already done it, and I can just pull this out of the freezer or rehydrate it if I freeze dry it whenever I want to use it. I am going to get this out of the pan and just put it into a bowl and do another batch. I've never used tarragon before until I started growing it last year, and I didn't really experiment too much with it last year. I just knew I wanted to have some in my spice drawer. Looks lovely, doesn't it? It wasn't until this year that I really started to experiment with it, and I am loving it. All right, I'm gonna get some more butter in this pan. And I'm not putting salt in here because whatever I'm going to use this base for, I will salt, in the dish itself. Before I drop the celery in the boiling water, I'm going to add some ice cubes to a pan of cold water or a bowl of cold water that I have over here. Because as soon as the celery is in the water for 2 to 3 minutes, I'm going to immediately scoop it out, put it in an ice bath to stop the cooking process. Then we'll get that cooled down and we can get that frozen as well. It smells so good. And we're blanching the celery. Number one, it's going to help preserve the color, but it's also going to kill the enzyme in here that keeps it from aging, which it will do even in the freezer. And so to preserve the quality, the freshness, the flavor, and even the color, you need to blanch most vegetables before you freeze them. All right, our celery is ready to come out. So I am just going to turn the heat off, and I'm just going to use a slotted spoon to pull it right out of the hot bath and dump it into a polar plunge. That's it for that. I'm just going to let that sit for a bit while we finish off on this mirepoix. This is looking fantastic. I just turned the heat down a tiny bit because we are starting to caramelize just a little bit, and that's not the goal of cooking this. It's not to caramelize it. It's just to deepen the flavor of all the different vegetables. This looks fantastic. I'm going to call this one done. So we're just going to add that to what we've already got here in the bowl. And we have one more batch to do. I'm going to do an extra dose of tarragon in here because I tasted the mirepoix and it is insanely good. This little ingredient here, this little herb, is doing something incredible in there. And then when I get this into the finished product bowl, I'll mix it all together so it's evenly blended in with the rest of it. Ten minutes more on that. I'll bring you back when we're done. All right, we are done. So I just need to get what has cooked into this bowl and then mix all 3 batches together in here so that the flavor profiles are pretty even throughout. Remember, I added that extra tarragon to this last batch. That is quite a bit of Mirepoix. Now I'm gonna let this cool down for a bit before I portion it out into bags that can go into the freezer. I will probably portion it out into 1 or 2 cup serving sizes. And in the meantime, I did get the blanched celery cooled down, so we're gonna package that up. All right, so I just dumped the celery from the ice water bath into a fine mesh strainer here, and I'm gonna measure it into a Ziploc bag just so I know exactly how much is in there, so that I know how much cream and leeks and potatoes to add when I'm ready to make this into a delicious kind of cream of celery soup. 1 cup. 2. 3. It's probably going to be about 3 1/4 cups. 3 1/4 cups. I just put all of the celery down to the bottom of the bag, and I zippered it almost all the way, and I'm just going to roll it just to get the air out and then seal it. And then I just have to write on here that this is 3 1/4 cups of blanched celery. And that's ready to go into the freezer. Next, I have all of the celery tops that I soaked in a salty water bath. I just need to get those dried off, and then we can get those into the freezer as well. They don't have to be totally dry, but I don't want them, you know, super wet either. Now, I did not save all of the celery tops. That was a ton of celery tops, but I did keep some of them, especially the better looking ones. Now I just need to label these. Celery tops, 2024. And remember, I still have all of this onion too. So I'm gonna see if I can get the onion into the bag I already have in the freezer. So this is red onion, yellow onion, and it looks like maybe some kale stems. And this is, all 3 of these bags will be for making stocks, broths, things like that this fall. All right, I filled up the rest of that bag with the onions. We got 2 bags of celery tops for the freezer. We got 3 1/4 cups of blanched celery to use in soup this fall or winter. And then we have the Mirepoix that we still need to get divided up. I'm going to do 1 to 2 cups in these little Ziploc sandwich bags. These are not freezer grade sandwich bags, but I will put them into a larger freezer grade bag. There we have it. I have turned a mediocre celery harvest into a year's worth of Mirepoix to use as a starter base for many, many recipes throughout the rest of the year. Now, I mentioned I did taste this as I was making it, but I am telling you, this is absolutely phenomenal in flavor. That tarragon is sensational. It really elevates the flavor profile. Thank you so much for joining me in my kitchen. My name is Kelly. You're at A Better Choice Homestead, and I do hope you come back and visit again soon.